Hello, and thanks for joining me on another garden video. I am doing some fall upkeep, well, I should say end of the summer upkeep in the garden, and I have removed some tomatoes. So the Korean long that used to be in front of the great white tomato has been removed, and I still have the accordion, the orange, and the Cherokee purple in this area. So only 3 of the 4 survived. Over here, I had to remove the Buratino from its spot next to the Rutgers. Most of my tomatoes look okay, but I did have to remove that one from out of this bed of 8. I did plant some fall crop. Only a few fall crops have been planted in the garden, and I've kept them under a shade cloth to protect them. So in these bags, I have Mizuna, which is something new for me to plant, purple top turnips, some radish, and then different kinds of beets, if you want to pause the video to see what I planted. But quite a few of them have come up, so I needed to go ahead and thin some of them out as they began to grow. So I'm just taking out some that are 3 or 4 per planting spot and taking it down to 2. I didn't want to take out too many, but I did want to remove and then some of the seedlings. So I just am taking care of that as they grow larger. And here is the first trellis in the yard, or I call it trellis number 1, and it is looking pretty yellow and beat up. I harvested quite a bit of fruit from the outside, and this is what the interior looks like. A lot of brown, a lot of dieback in this trellis, and at the very end you can see the sweet potatoes and some of the acorn squash that are beginning to grow downward from off the top of the trellis. So I am still getting fruit, but the trellis did get pretty beat up from the summer. Although I still kept a pretty good watering schedule despite the drought conditions that we dealt with, the trellis does look worse for the wear. Although the watermelon, now that the high heat is gone, are coming back. So I have a couple watermelons that are showing up on the trellis. But overall, it is looking pretty bad and headed downwards as we go into the cooler weather. But if anything shows up on this trellis, I am not going to pull it off and stop it from growing. If Mother Nature wants to keep going, I'll let it keep growing, as I have no intentions of planting anything. And the rogue tomato is putting out fruit as well. Over on the other trellis, I have 2 smaller pumpkins growing. I'm not quite sure what the name of this pumpkin is, as I was just given a pumpkin from my mother. It was kind of dark orange, brownish color. And to see that they start off a lime color is pretty cool. But the larger of the one, because I did harvest one already, was a pretty nice sized pumpkin. Not really a carving pumpkin, more of an edible pumpkin. But I was delighted to see that 2 more popped up. But the other trellis is looking beat up as well too. But despite all of that brown, there is another royal golden that is growing on that trellis. Going through my hot peppers, so this is a bunch of my hot peppers here. I believe these are the scorpion peppers. And it looks like I broke off the stem. But this is what the tomato hornworm damage looks like. You'll have branches, and then all of a sudden it'll look like the branches were completely eaten down. So I am trying very hard to reduce my use of chemicals, even organic chemicals. So I'm mixing up some BT, which is an organic pesticide, to use in my sprayer. Instead of spraying the whole garden, what I ended up doing was mixing up just a gallon, putting it in the container to make sure my ratios were correct. And I just sprayed right in the area where I saw the worm. I chose to spray not because I didn't look for it, because I really did try. I took my black light out. I tried to see if I could find the worms that were eating those particular plants, but I never did find it. So I opted to spray, but just in that area. In addition to spraying, over here in the back where I had planted tomatoes, just 4 of them, I'm also trimming these back and removing the tops off of most of my tomatoes. Because I am supposed to only have about 6 more weeks of weather for the tomatoes before my first frost, I do want my tomatoes to focus on ripening the fruit that are already there and not trying to grow taller. So on all of my trellises, I did go through, and for the areas that I can't reach, that's about 7 or 8 feet tall in that area. So in the areas that I can reach, I had to get some additional pair of hands to help me out. But I'm just trimming the growing tips of all of those tomatoes. And there are quite a few green tomatoes that are still available to me in the garden. On top of that, I'm pulling out a lot of summer crops like these summer squash that did ripen and give me a few. They were only testers. I planted them late, so I didn't expect much of a harvest from them, but it did give me the information I needed about how to grow them, like them needing cages for next year. And the last bit of cleanup I've done is removing the sunflowers. They are drooping, the blooms are spent. Those are really for the birds to enjoy, as I did not harvest my sunflowers because they got too tall. They got about 12 foot tall. So again, I needed some assistance to come in and chop down the sunflowers. And that's really what I've been doing in the garden at this point. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. I do appreciate it. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching.